It's strange how betrayal never arrives with thunder. Sometimes it comes quietly, through a misplaced object, a voice that sounds slightly different, a silence that lingers too long. For me, it began with a ring, a simple gold band that had survived wars, births, and funerals. A ring that had passed from my grandmother's hand to my mother's, and finally to mine. It wasn't worth much in money, but in meaning, it was everything. The day I discovered it was gone. The Florida sky was blindingly bright, too beautiful for the kind of truth waiting for me inside that house. My name is Eleanor Parker, and until that afternoon, I thought I knew my family. I'd just come home from a routine checkup. Nothing serious, just another reminder that time moves faster after 60. Robert, my husband of 45 years, was out golfing. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels thick in your chest. When I walked into our bedroom, everything looked the same, the curtains drawn halfway, the scent of cedar polish in the air, the stack of books on Robert's nightstand. But my jewelry box, it was tilted, slightly off-center, as if someone had touched it and tried to put it back exactly the same way. I almost laughed at myself. 45 years of marriage, and I was getting suspicious over a few inches. Still, I walked over and lifted the lid. My pearls were there, my gold bracelet, the brooch from Robert's mother, but the velvet slot where my mother's wedding ring should have been was empty. I froze. I never took that ring out except to clean it. I checked the drawers, the counter, the sink, nothing. By the time Robert came home, I had convinced myself it would turn up. Maybe I'd misplaced it. Maybe Grace borrowed it. Anything but the truth that whispered somewhere deep in my chest, that something inside this house had already shifted, and I hadn't noticed. That evening, Grace stopped by with groceries like she always did on Thursdays. But her smile was too quick, her laughter too thin. She unpacked the bags without meeting my eyes. When I asked if she was tired from work, she said yes, the bank had been stressful. But her voice trembled on the last word. I noticed things then. The way she avoided looking at my hands, the way her fingers fidgeted with her sleeve. That night, Robert barely ate. He excused himself 3 times to answer calls and came back pretending nothing happened. When he finally sat beside me, I caught a faint smell on his jacket, cigarette smoke and something metallic, like coins or machinery he hadn't smoked in 30 years. When we went to bed, I could feel him awake beside me long after the lights were off. His breathing was steady, too steady, pretending to sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan and wondering how something so small, a missing ring, could feel like the start of something I couldn't stop. 3 days later, I found the proof. Grace had left her gym bag in the laundry room. I reached in to wash her workout clothes and felt a folded piece of paper in the pocket. I almost threw it away, but curiosity made me unfold it. It was a pawn receipt. Fletcher Avenue Pawn Shop. Date, October 2nd. Item, lady's white gold ring, Celtic design, 3 small diamonds. Price, $3,200. Signature, Grace Parker. I don't remember how long I sat there staring at it. My chest felt tight, my hands cold. When Grace came by that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen. 2 cups of coffee sat untouched on the table, the receipt between them. She froze when she saw it. "Mom, I can explain." "Please do," I said. My voice sounded calm, but inside, my heart was pounding so loudly I thought she could hear it. "That ring has been in our family for generations. You sold it while I was in the hospital. Why?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I needed the money." "For what?" I asked. "Are you in some kind of trouble?" She hesitated. Then she whispered, "Ask Dad." At first, I thought she was lying, trying to shift the blame. But the look in her eyes wasn't guilt. It was fear. "What does your father have to do with this?" I asked. Grace's voice broke. "He's the reason I did it, Mom. He's the reason I can't sleep. Ask him about the locked drawer in his study. Ask him why men came to my house threatening David's life if someone didn't pay up." The room spun. "Grace, what are you talking about?" She unlocked her phone and handed it to me. "I've been trying to protect you." On the screen were photos, casino slips, loan contracts, Text messages from strangers with names like Marcus, Big Eddie, Quick Cash Lending. Every number added up to one unbearable truth. Robert owed more than $60,000 in gambling debt. My throat went dry. No, he doesn't even gamble. Grace shook her head. He does now. After Uncle Jimmy died, he told you he used Jimmy's inheritance to pay off the mortgage. He lied, Mom. He lost it all. Then he started borrowing. From banks, then from people who make threats instead of reminders. I stared at the phone, at the life I thought I understood. You sold the ring to cover his debt, she nodded, crying. It bought us one more month before they came for him, or for you. That night, I sat in the dark long after she left. Robert was asleep upstairs, breathing peacefully, unaware that the world he'd built on lies was beginning to crack. The house felt different now, colder, heavier. Every shadow seemed to hide something I'd missed. Around midnight, I walked to the study door. It was locked, as always. For 45 years, I had respected that lock. That night, I picked it open with a hairpin and shaking hands. Inside was order, the kind of neatness that only hides chaos, folders labeled by month. Bank statements from an account I'd never seen, withdrawals in the thousands, loan contracts with brutal interest rates, a photo of our house stapled to one of them, a note scrawled in red ink, payment or consequences. At the bottom of the drawer lay casino receipts, Rivers, Seminole Hard Rock, Lie's Poker Room, dates matching nights he said he was consulting. And then I found the deed to our house. A second mortgage, my signature forged in perfect imitation. I sank to the floor surrounded by lies, each piece of paper a small betrayal that added up to the collapse of my entire life. By morning, the tears had dried. Something colder had taken their place. That's the thing about betrayal. Once the shock fades, clarity arrives like a blade. I looked in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. But she wasn't weak. She was awake. When Robert came down for breakfast, he smiled as if nothing had changed. He poured his coffee, kissed my cheek, and said, "Morning." "Honey." "Morning," I said back. He had no idea the woman across the table already knew everything. That day, I decided to stop being a victim. I called Grace. We met that afternoon at Lettuce Lake Park, the same spot where I used to take her when she was a child. The air smelled of pine and water lilies. She looked smaller somehow, weighed down by guilt. "What do we do now?" she asked. "We fix it," I said. Together. We sat on the bench and made a plan. First, I'd document everything, the forged signatures, the loans, the threats. Second, Grace would help move the remaining money to new accounts under my maiden name. And third, we'd find a way to protect ourselves, no matter what. Robert didn't know that decades ago I'd taken out a small life insurance policy in my name only. Its cash value was $30,000, enough to start over if I had to. Grace still had my mother's pearls and cameos in a safety deposit box. Together we could survive whatever came next, but surviving wasn't enough. I wanted justice. That's when I called my nephew Tommy, a divorce lawyer and computer expert. I told him everything. By the next morning, he was at the house installing tiny cameras in the ceilings and corners. "Just be yourself," he said. "Let him talk." For 2 weeks, I did exactly that. I smiled, cooked his favorite meals, and listened to his golf stories. All while the cameras watched. They caught him making calls, forging my name, laughing with his brother. Each video clip stripped away the last thread of illusion. By the time Thanksgiving approached, I had enough evidence to destroy him. And that's exactly what I planned to do, on the day he valued most. Thanksgiving morning arrived bright and golden, the kind of morning that once would have filled me with joy. But this year, the air felt different. It was calm in a way that made me feel steady, like the silence before a storm that you know must come. Robert loved Thanksgiving more than any other holiday. It was his performance of the year. He'd carve the turkey, raise his glass to family, and remind everyone how lucky we were. This year, I decided to let him have his spotlight one last time. I spent 3 days preparing the house. Grace helped me cook, her hands shaking only once when she brushed against the ringless slot on my jewelry box. I smiled at her softly. "Don't worry," I said. It'll come home soon. We roasted turkey, baked pies, and polished the old china. I arranged candles and flowers exactly the way Robert liked them. Every detail perfect, every moment planned. On the morning of Thanksgiving, Robert came into the kitchen wearing his best shirt and that familiar, easy smile. "Everything looks beautiful, honey," he said, kissing my cheek. "You've outdone yourself again," I nodded. "I wanted it to be memorable," he laughed. "It always is." By noon, the house was full. Michael flew in from Seattle. Anna came with her husband and kids. Robert's siblings arrived carrying casseroles and wine. The air buzzed with laughter and chatter. I stood at the center of it all, smiling, passing plates, pretending everything was normal. But inside, my mind was quiet, sharp. Every sound, every movement felt heightened. I wasn't nervous anymore. I was ready. After dinner, when the table was cleared and everyone had settled into the living room, I stood near the fireplace and tapped my glass. "Before dessert," I said, "I'd like to share something with you all. Something about gratitude and truth." Robert looked surprised but pleased. He loved speeches. He probably thought I was going to praise him for his years of hard work and generosity. He had no idea. I walked over to the television, where my laptop was already connected. "I've been working on a little family project," I said. "A look back at our memories." Then I clicked the first video. At first, the sound was faint, just Robert's voice. "Yeah, put 15 grand on the game. My wife's too trusting to notice." The laughter in the room died. Robert's face turned pale. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "what is this?" I didn't answer. The next video started automatically. Robert sat at his desk, forging my signature on a document, humming softly. Gasps filled the room. Grace lowered her head. Michael's jaw tightened. "Turn it off!" Robert barked. "Eleanor, this isn't funny." I looked at him calmly. "I agree. It's not funny at all." The screen changed again, showing photos of bank statements, gambling debts, loan contracts with my name written across them in perfect but false handwriting. "Robert Parker," I said clearly, "you've spent over $60,000 gambling. You forged my signature on our mortgage and emptied our savings. You've lied to your family, to me, and to everyone in this room." He stood up, trembling. "Eleanor, please. We can talk about this privately." "No," I said. "We've spent our whole lives keeping your secrets private. Today, the truth belongs to everyone." I turned back to the screen. The final slide showed legal documents. 3 weeks ago, I filed for divorce on grounds of fraud and forgery. The court has already frozen all accounts in your name. Every cent you hid is now under review. Gasps rippled through the room. Robert's sister covered her mouth. Anna started to cry. Robert took a step toward me, his voice breaking. "Eleanor, you can't—" "I already did." Then I gestured toward the window, where 2 men in suits stood outside. "And the gentlemen waiting outside aren't guests. They're federal agents. They'd like a word with you about the transfers that look an awful lot like money laundering." At that moment, the door opened, and the agents stepped in. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was louder than I expected. Robert didn't struggle. He just stared at me, a look not of anger but disbelief. As they let him out, he said, "You were supposed to stand by me, Eleanor." I met his eyes. "I did, for 45 years. But you stopped standing beside me a long time ago." The door closed behind him, and the house fell into silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Grace walked up to me and wrapped her arms around me. "Mom," she whispered, "you did it." I held her tightly. "No," I said softly, "we did." That night, after everyone left, I sat alone at the table surrounded by half-eaten pie and empty wine glasses. The candles burned low, their light flickering across the silverware. I should have felt triumphant, but what I felt instead was peace, quiet, heavy peace. For the first time in years, the house felt honest. 6 months later, the garden outside my window was blooming again. Robert had accepted a plea deal. 18 months in federal prison, 3 years of probation. The divorce went through without a fight. I kept the house, the car, and what little money was left. Grace and I went to the pawn shop together. The man behind the counter looked nervous when he saw the old receipt. We paid the price he asked, and he slid a small velvet box across the counter. Inside was my mother's wedding ring. The gold was dull, the diamonds tiny, but when Grace placed it back into my hand, it felt like the weight of 4 generations finding its way home. We both cried. Michael helped me set up new finances. Anna brought her kids over on weekends. Slowly, the pieces of my life began to settle into something solid again. One afternoon, I sat on the porch with Grace, watching the sun sink low behind the magnolia trees. She asked quietly, "Do you ever miss him?" I thought about that for a long moment. "I miss the man I thought he was," I said. "But that man never really existed." Grace nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. "I'm proud of you, Mom," I smiled. "I'm proud of us." That winter, I started something new. A small group at the community center for women who'd been betrayed or deceived financially. We called it Eleanor's Circle. The first meeting had only 6 people. By the 3rd month, we had more than 40. We shared stories, advice, pain, and healing. Some of us laughed again for the first time in years. I didn't expect to find purpose at 69. But life has a way of surprising you once you stop being afraid. Sometimes I sit on the porch in the mornings, watching the birds gather around the feeder Robert once built. Cardinals mostly, bright red, stubborn little things. He used to say they were symbols of luck. Now I think they're symbols of endurance, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that survival isn't about being unbroken. It's about rebuilding yourself from the pieces they left behind. I've also learned that betrayal doesn't just destroy trust. It reveals truth, and sometimes that truth, painful as it is, becomes your freedom. When I look at my reflection now, I don't see the woman who was lied to. I see the woman who learned, who endured, who refused to disappear. And if anyone out there is listening, anyone who's ever been blindsided by the person they trusted most, I want you to know something. You're not foolish for believing in love. You're not weak for trusting. The cruelty isn't in your faith. It's in their deceit. But here's the secret no one tells you. The moment you face the truth, you take your power back. I lost a husband, a fortune, and a ring. But I found something far greater, myself, and that I've learned is the only thing worth keeping. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who teach us the hardest lessons. Betrayal doesn't end your story. It rewrites it. If you've ever been broken, lied to, or made to feel small, remember this. You are not defined by what they took from you, but by what you rebuild after they're gone. Stand tall in your truth. Heal at your own pace, and never forget, walking away isn't weakness. It's freedom, because the moment you choose yourself, the story finally begins again. If Eleanor's story moved you, remember, every ending carries a lesson, and every truth deserves to be heard. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful real-life stories about love, loss, and the courage to start again. Your support helps us share more voices that deserve to be heard.